Hi everyone, Laura Louise with Into the Light with Laura Louise. I wanted to come on today and really talk about forgiveness and the layers of forgiveness. So my story goes all the way back to when I was 9 years old, and recently I've been talking about a molestation that happened to me. It's kind of part of my journey, part of my story. So I've really been digging into it and dissecting it and just coming up with kind of what has happened in my life. The thing I want to teach each and every one of you today is that forgiveness is layers. Just because you start working on one thing doesn't mean that there's not going to be another aspect of that same thing. For example, so I've been recently trying to dissect my story of kind of how my life has gone on the path it went on. And I went back to where a man broke into my house when I was 9 years old. And my father ended up, of course, taking me out of the home because I was in my mother's care, and my father found out, and of course he took me out of the home. But what didn't happen is my voice was not heard. So my mother was doting over me and telling me she loved me and all this, showered with affection that I never had before. And when my father took me away from that, I felt anger towards him because my mother was finally loving me and he took me away from it, and it started this whole journey. But recently, what I was kind of sitting and meditating on is another aspect of that story. And the story where I had to forgive my mother for leaving me home alone for this to even happen. Now, you might think, well, duh, of course you have to think of that. I mean, that's the whole reason why this occurred. But my mother had been such a pillar and a rock in my life throughout my adult life. And honestly, I hadn't thought about it in years, not to the depth that I've been recently thinking about it and dissecting it. And so I had to go back and actually forgive my mother for leaving me home alone. My mother has passed on. She's been passed on since 2009. And if there's one thing I know is that my mother loved me, and if she could take it back, she would. She never, for whatever reason, talked about it. We never discussed it in this kind of depth to where she apologized or really even just shined the light on it. It remained darkness. Basically, we didn't talk about it, and it kind of stayed there. And it wasn't until recently where I pulled it out, started dissecting it, started my forgiveness journey with forgiving the person who broke in, going through that whole thing. But there's one thing I'm learning is that forgiveness is multidimensional. Even though I had to forgive the person who harmed me, I also had to forgive my mother who left me alone, my father who really didn't do anything but take me out of a home that was a bad thing happened and he took me out. But that forgiveness was about really just not being heard and just my own internal what went wrong or what happened. And who knows what's going to happen. Maybe there's even another dimension that I haven't even thought about yet when it comes to this. Now think about every single thing that has happened in your life. And think about the depth and the dimension to everything that you have endured, that you've gone through, that you've overcome, that you're still holding on to. It's not just one thing. The biggest thing I want to bring to every single one of you right now, right here today, and let's be real, is that forgiveness is layers. And I don't mean layers of one occurrence and another occurrence, layers of even the same occurrence. Because it depends on how many different avenues that you need to look at in order to walk through that full forgiveness journey. So people often say, is there a point where people are fully forgiven and they're just happy and there's no more unforgiveness and the work is done? Well, that's a really good question. And I'm going to say, as long as we're breathing, there's always opportunity for forgiveness. Because as we continue to go on our journey and we continue to want to have more forgiveness in our life, there's still things that happen. The boss that angers you, the child that, doesn't act right, the teacher at school, the whatever, right? the thing is that no matter who's in our life and no matter what occurrences or situations we come across, it is a constant opportunity to work on ourselves. Because the more we work on ourselves and we remove those triggers that say, I'm not enough, or nobody's paying attention to me, or I have no value, or fill in the blank, right? We all have our triggers which make us feel a certain kind of way. Somebody could say something very simple to you and you can take it totally out of context because there's still things inside of you that need to be worked on. So today, what I wanted to come on and just share is that as we all continue on our forgiveness journey, don't forget that there's depth, there's dimension. Just because you went once and you wrote your letter or you sent up you burned your thoughts or whatever the case is, that is wonderful, that is awesome, and I am so happy for you. But don't think that because you did that it's completely done and over. There may be a different way of looking at it, another person, another situation that you may need to continue that forgiveness journey with in order to get the full healing around whatever that is. In my case, it was a molestation. There were 3 people I needed to forgive. And I'm sure that God is going to show me pretty soon here that there's probably something that I myself need to forgive myself for. So right there could be 4 people for one occurrence. Just food for thought. I hope this has value for you today. I hope you start thinking more about your unforgiveness, your hurt, your anger, and how you want to release it, and the depth and the layers and the dimension. And you sit down and you start peeling them. Because your life is waiting for you and there's nothing but joy, happiness, and peace on the other side of this hurt, turmoil, and issues. My name is Laura Louise. I'm with Into the Light with Laura Louise, and I'll see you next time. Bye.